Before we start this episode, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank those of you who have reached out, as those of us in Florida face the uncertainty of Hurricane Irma. And while it may have cost us an interruption to the podcast schedule, with the exception of a loss of power for a few hours, we're so thankful to be able to say that we made it through the storm unscathed. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for many in our state, or those in the islands to our south. Our thoughts are with them as they try to recover from a disaster that it could have very easily been us instead. We thank you for understanding, and we're glad to be back. Let's get started.
"24-year-old Jennifer Kesse disappeared January 24th, 2006. She was last seen at her condo on Conroy Road.
To solve a missing persons case which has haunted Orlando investigators.
So we're still waiting for that one person to come through with the one bit of information that could bring Jennifer home.
Welcome back to Unconcluded, a real-time investigative podcast looking at the 2006 disappearance of Jennifer Kesse. 11 and a half years ago, Jennifer disappeared without a trace from Orlando, Florida. And for the past 10 episodes, we've discussed the facts, considered the theories, explored leads, and investigated possible suspects. Along the way, we've talked with Jennifer's family members and friends, some of which you've heard on the podcast. During our unexpected hurricane break, I've had more conversations with someone you've yet to hear from directly on this podcast. Someone who has been a driving force behind the search for Jennifer. You've only heard old news clips and press conferences, but that changes today.
Yeah. No, first of all, we do want to thank all the people that participate in the show, in your podcast. Podcasts, I was like, what the hell is a podcast? Honestly. And I'm like, what the hell is a fifth grade teacher from Tampa doing a podcast? Like, what is up with this? And then you find out that it's state of the art. It's what's going to be happening. It's solving cases. It's phenomenal. Because? Why? Because it's getting millions of people involved. It's getting people to remember what happened, and it's getting people to finally say, are you kidding me? They haven't done anything with that? I knew something about that. And people have walked forward. So podcasts are solving crimes that law enforcement can't. And they're solving long-term crimes. And I think in the long run, law enforcement's learning from podcasts because they're starting to see the questions and the thought processes of many, many, many people other than who sit in their department, who they work with on a regular basis. So to me, it's ingenious. I'm like, wow, I'm taken back. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then when you guys went over 1 million downloads, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, this is incredible. And the involvement of people, and that's what's needed. That's what's needed to bring Jennifer home, as it's always been. I've said from the very start, if everyone in the world knew about Jennifer, we know where Jennifer is. But people do know about Jennifer, and they do know something that could connect something. And we need them to come. Well, I mean, I'm just repeating myself, but how can I beg? I mean, what can I say? What do I need to do? We put $1 million out 3 times, 500.
That's Jennifer's father, Drew. Today, he wants to talk directly to you, the person listening to my words at this very moment. So in this episode, that's what we're going to do. Talk with Drew Kesse about the investigation, about looking back, and ultimately about moving forward. Because really, moving forward is what this is about. Jennifer's parents have been at the forefront of this investigation, at the forefront of searching for their daughter since day one. They've given more interviews than I dare to even count. You've heard from Joyce Kesse in earlier episodes of this podcast. You've seen Joyce and Drew on many TV interviews and quoted in print articles for over a decade. At times, I'd wager they felt the weight of seemingly being the only people who were still working toward finding Jennifer. But those of you out there listening, I know you're working together to do the same. We see that in every email, every message, and every phone call that we get. People who want to make a difference. People who want to find Jennifer. It doesn't matter when you started this journey. If you've been here since the beginning, since the podcast, or since yesterday. You heard Drew say it. Somewhere out there, someone knows something. And every single person that joins along is one step closer to finding that person or compelling that person to come forward. As you heard Drew mention at the top of the show, getting people involved, getting people to remember, and getting people to question everything is the route that we're continuing down together. There's a few things that we're going to address in this episode. Things that Drew Kesse wants to set the record straight on, so that we're all clear on where we stand as we move forward. And that's where we're going to start, after the break. Have you ever tried a Kind bar? You might have seen them in your local grocery store, coffee shop, or gym. I can tell you right now that they make delicious, healthy snacks using whole ingredients that you can recognize and pronounce. So here's your special deal. If you're ready to try some tasty and healthy snacks, you can try 10 Kind bars for free. All you have to pay is shipping. When you order the sample box, you'll also get to try Kind Snack Club, where you'll receive monthly snacks at a discount and get members-only bonuses. You shouldn't have to choose between your health and taste when it comes to snacking. That's why both award-winning chefs and nutritionists love and recommend Kind bars. I tried their 10 snack sample box, and the dark chocolate nuts is my go-to bar. I put it in my own lunchbox every single week. To pick up your free sample box, go to kindsnacks.com/unconcluded. That's kindsnacks.com/unconcluded. Thanks to Kind for sponsoring Unconcluded. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you help support this podcast.
Sure. Really, reason why I wanted to chat is I do listen to everything online that you guys have put out, and really, we greatly appreciate it because you have not exploited Jennifer in the least. But I see some confusion around some things, and a lot of questions come in, and there's a lot of questions that you haven't been able to answer. And maybe it's time that they get answered so people know. And I am a firm believer that the more people that put their heads together, I don't care, the crazies are out there, crazy ideas come out, but sometimes the craziest of ideas make everything work. And sometimes just what's happening makes somebody remember something, as you obviously have experienced. I do want to clarify one thing concerning the cell phones. I've gotten down to the bottom of everything. I'm comfortable with what has happened with that, and if I could just straighten that out right now, because it always seems to be a core of controversy, and it has been with us too, honestly. So if I can just straighten the when the cell phones were turned off and the ping study and what have you, I'd like to really straighten that out, and maybe get people just not to look at the ping study anymore, because really we just shouldn't be looking at the ping. But at any rate, when we had the ping study, we were brought into a room with the law enforcement, and they explained to us, basically, quote unquote, that really, Mr. and Mrs. Kesse, you didn't know your daughter. She was out up here in a bad area and this and that. So we looked at the ping study, and we're sitting there, and none of the pings made sense to me. I'm just a stupid guy. And none of them made sense to me. Well, how could she be down south and 30 seconds later she's 20 miles north? out here and over there. And I'm like, you can't go by that. This is not good. Obviously, it's not good. Anybody who just looks at it knows it's not good. Well, no, this is how it was. And within that conversation, I was told that at a certain point, the phones were not powered down, but either destroyed or batteries physically taken out. And I was told the time, and I think the time was somewhere between 10:40 and 10:20 and 10:40 p.m. on the 23rd, the night before we reported Jennifer missing. And spurred a lot of controversy, a lot of anxiety over the years of, well, is it at night or is it in the morning? Is it at night or is it in the morning? And up until, honestly, only probably maybe 2 having a family discussion, it kind of came up again. And I think it was really because of the show. And I have, first of all, Logan wasn't even in the meeting, but I have a totally, I guess, different viewpoint of that meeting than anyone else had, because I remember being told directly what happened and at what time. And it seems between that time, which was years, probably 9 years ago now, maybe even 10 years ago now, that conversation took place, maybe even 11 years actually. They've walked back on that. And everything that I've been able to ascertain, even in the last couple of weeks that I've stuck my neck out, not neck, but stuck my head out, asking questions here, there, and everywhere, they really don't know when that phone was turned off, because the ping study is absolutely no good. I was able to actually get someone at law enforcement to get Verizon specialists to look at the ping study instead of the police. And the Verizon specialist, if you can't go by there, you might as well just take it out, because it's obvious what's happening here. It's pinging all over the place. It doesn't. I can't tell you where that phone was from this ping study. It just doesn't. And people have to remember, this is not infancy, but, it's only 10 years into cell phone life. There was no Facebook. Texting was still the old, you had to hit 1, 2, or 3 on the buttons for A, B, and C. That. There was no Google, Earth, or anything. It was only data. So, over the years, honestly, something that I've always believed comes to be just, we can't believe it because the ping study is so unreliable that it's basically garbage. So I want to get that out there, straighten that out, that don't worry about the ping study act as if it's not, because it's garbage. And we've had the rise in the past. You just can't follow the ping study. Which ping is right? Out of maybe 11 pings that they show, which ping is right? I can't tell you which ping is right, because it was told. So, I still believe the only question I've ever had on my mind has been because of that ping study. But I think it's a lot of heartache in my head and heart that the ping study is just out and we shouldn't believe anything of it. I really want to get that out there because a lot of time is spent on that sometimes online and what have you. It's just not worth it. Yeah. Absolutely. And we can't use that. The last actual thing that we know Jennifer did was coming home from work. She went at 6:15. She went through a toll booth that she always goes through. And then she had a conversation on her house phone because she had very bad cell reception in her condo. She literally had to go out on her deck to talk on her cell phone. And she was not making contact regularly with the cell phone, so she used her landline. And at 9:57 p.m. on January 23rd, 2006, was the last contact anyone had, and it was with Rob, her boyfriend. And that is it. So unfortunately, the cell phones suck.
The most talked about piece of information over the course of this podcast, without a doubt, has to be concerning the cell phones. Not only Jennifer's cell phone, but also that of her brother's friend, who'd left his cell phone at Jennifer's condo over the preceding weekend. In our initial research into this case, before any podcast had ever been recorded, we'd accepted as fact that Jennifer's phone had the batteries removed at 10:40 p.m. on the night of January 23rd, 2006. It'd been posted online, and there wasn't any reason to believe that it wasn't true. It had us immediately believing that something had to have happened the night of January 23rd. But those beliefs didn't last long. As you know from one of our very first episodes, we soon came to learn from Joyce Kesse that it might not be true. Since the day of my first conversation with her, we've operated on the idea that the phones being rendered useless on the night of January 23rd, 2006 was a possibility, but not a fact. And as you just heard from Drew, that's the line of thinking that we still have to follow. Yes, at some point he was told that, but along with it the ping information that didn't seem to make sense, which now all these years later, in discussions with the phone company experts and investigators on the case, it's just not reliable anymore. The only fact is that this information cannot be considered fact. But let's be honest, that sucks. Being able to confirm without a shadow of a doubt when those phones had their batteries removed or were destroyed would certainly be helpful in establishing the timeline, which is still so unclear 11 years later. But if we are investigating this thing properly, we just can't do that. We have to leave open the possibility that information is just not accurate, which goes back to the point you heard Drew make. It just doesn't matter anymore. After my discussion with Drew, as Scott and I listened back to the audio, there's one thing I kept telling him. We can't waste our time worrying about something that there isn't an answer to. The fact is this: evidence of when those phones were rendered useless, or where their locations pinged to, is not reliable. The evidence exists, and the experts say that it's not reliable. This isn't a case of that information being out there and we just need to find it. It's right there, sitting in front of our faces, but we can't use it. So why are we going to sit around and spin our wheels about the time, about the locations, when ultimately, no matter what, we can't even use them as facts of the case? It's a waste of time, and that's the point that I think Drew is making. It's time to move forward and focus on the things that will make a difference, instead of the things that have nowhere to go. It goes back to what I said earlier, something that Drew and I spent a lot of time talking about. How are we moving forward?
I want people to understand something. I guess we have to back up. I want people to understand something. Put yourself, not in the Kesses, whatever, Drew and Joyce Kesse, Logan Kesse, whatever. Just put yourself in a situation that someone in your family didn't come home, isn't where they're supposed to be, can't be found. I mean, talk about anxiety, talk about, to this day, all of our minds run on two minds. We run on two things, normality, and then subliminally what's happening with Jennifer every second of our lives for 11 and a half years now. So when you're in the midst of this in day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you are hoping and praying that professionals in law enforcement are doing exactly what they need to do. They know how to handle what's going on, and they're going actively to do what they've done. Unfortunately, that did not happen with Jennifer. And everybody knows it, including them. And that has put us behind the 8 ball from the very beginning. And that's why this case is so challenging. And it's very hard to deal with. And I can't tell you some of the things that are so distressing that have happened with law enforcement. I just don't want to tell that because it's beating up on people. We can't do that. It's past done. We can't get back what they didn't do. We've passed 4 laws because of what they didn't do. But we have to move forward with what we have. And the answers are there. We know more than one person in this world knows what happened to Jennifer. We know that. Why we can't get those people to speak, I don't know. We've tried everything in our hearts. We've tried everything. And we haven't been able to touch the right person in their heart to finally step forward and say, I know. or at least I know something where you can go. How would you like to be 11 and a half years and you can stand at Jennifer's front door and you can't go 1/8 of an inch forward, backwards, left, or right? Nothing. Very, very difficult. And every step of the way, we have had more energy spent on dealing with law enforcement and legal than trying to find Jennifer. And it's sad because law enforcement, a lot of their hands are tied in a lot of it. And they have their system and their policies and their procedures, of which they did not have policies and procedures in the state of Florida for missing people until we created the law in 2008, which is really crazy. So a lot of things have happened. A lot of people have benefited and been found from the things that happened after Jennifer and the 4 other people in relative time frame that went missing in Orlando that have never been found to this day either. But it's very, very difficult, and try and put yourself in our shoes. You don't always think straight. I'm not the same person that I was 12 years ago. I am by far not the same person. Joyce is by far not the same person. We will never be the same people. We're damaged. We're trying to breathe every minute of our lives, go out to make a living so we can even have a roof over our head, let alone what we need to do to go find our daughter. And it should blow everyone's mind, but I don't want anyone in the situation we're in. It's just absolutely incredible. And we sit here and we're like, nothing. Could you imagine what Jennifer went through? Could you imagine this? I can't even get close to the feeling of Jennifer at the time of being taken. Could anyone get close to the feeling of physically being taken by someone you don't know or do know? I can't. It freaks me out. And that's what happened to her. And that's what happens to 1 million people a year in this country. But most of them we get back. But to have nothing for 11 and a half years on Jennifer Kesse and where she may be and who may have taken her, that is almost criminal in itself to this family. And we want people to know that Jennifer is exactly who we say she is. She is an incredible human being. She didn't have enemies. She did what she was supposed to be doing 99 and 44% of the time. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Our daughter has told us everything in her life. There was nothing hidden. We had a very open relationship with Jennifer. We have a very open relationship with Logan. That's the way we raised them. We used to tell our kids, you want to know something? There's nothing you can even think of doing that we haven't done already. So, what? But Jennifer and her mother, well, first of all, she was Daddy's little girl, but Jennifer and her mother had a very special relationship where everything was on the table at all times. And I could tell you right here that Jennifer was an incredible, is an incredible human being until we find it. Unfortunately, personally myself, I don't think Jennifer is with us anymore. But other people in the family have different, we all have different views. Everyone's an individual. We're all snowflakes, and we all have our own thoughts and processes and how we deal with it, what we want and what we don't want and everything else. But I don't wish this on I don't wish this on anyone. And I think we should have Jennifer home by now, or know what has happened to Jennifer for years. And that's hard to do. So many people have looked at the case. So many, the things we've had to do to get FBI involved, which is the worst experience of our life. It's just, I mean, it's just amazing. Every step of the way is just, it's a fight against the system. And the system just doesn't want to change, do what needs to be done to find people. I mean, is there a worse crime? Is there a worse crime than to abduct and take a human being against their will? Murder's not worse. I'm sorry. Murder's not worse. Because it ends up that way 99% of the time. But no, it's crazy. And I don't understand why this country doesn't have squads in every single state that is dedicated to nothing but the long-term missing of that state and of this country. I don't understand that. It's in our preamble, isn't it? Don't we have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? We don't have that. That was taken from this family. And it was specifically taken from Jennifer. And it's to me, as families of all the missing have to fight tooth and nail for anything and everything they can get for people to work on the case, not work on the case, put up billboards, put up signs, anything. I see online that people are taking shots of new posters up in Orlando of Jennifer, of all the pertinent spots where she used to be. That was me. I went out there 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago and I did that myself. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, is sit there and put signs back on electrical boxes. Because my daughter is still missing 11 and a half years later, and we haven't a clue of where she is. So we now have the first detective. There's two of them. One has passed away, unfortunately. We're sorry for that, but we won't get to talk to him anymore. And unfortunately, those two detectives were so old school, they didn't like computers. They didn't write anything down. They didn't put anything in the system. It was all in their head. After they retired, they were required to write down, please, what you know. How's that work? But, again, this is what we deal with. That's past. We need to start to go forward in the respect of what do we know, what are the facts, and where can we take this? And the facts are that we need someone to speak up. That's the fact, because we're nowhere. And somebody's sitting here that's laughing at knowing something and saying, they're lost, man. They're lost. Well, guess what? If you're listening, you're right. We're lost. We're lost. So, they're getting someone, what is it? I almost got away with murder. Let's hope the almost happens someday.
We live in an on-demand world. Almost anything that you want or need is available with the click of a button. Just like Unconcluded, you listen to this podcast when you want. And guess what? You can get postage on demand with Stamps.com. Which begs the question, why are you still going to the post office? Anything you can do at the post office, you can do from your own desk with Stamps.com. Buy and print US postage for any letter or package using your own computer and printer. And you can do it whenever you need to, 24/7. Just this week, I sent out a document, which I signed on a Sunday night and had in the mail by Monday morning, without making a trip to the post office. That's something that just wouldn't be possible without Stamps.com. Right now, you can use our podcast title Unconcluded for a special offer, a 4-week trial, including postage and a digital scale. So don't wait. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else, and click on the radio microphone at the top of the homepage. Type in Unconcluded. Again, that's Stamps.com and enter Unconcluded. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. Last episode, we presented another individual that had been mentioned by many as a possible suspect in Jennifer's disappearance. And back in earlier episodes, we covered other individuals that have come up over the years. Among them, the generic, quote-unquote, construction worker. Based on the theories of a construction worker at Jennifer's condominium possibly being responsible for her disappearance. Much of this was based on the appearance of the person of interest and on comments that Jennifer had made to family and friends about how she felt uncomfortable around many of the workers in her condo building. But there's one particular individual who seemed more interesting to us. Someone that Drew has talked about in past interviews, but seems to fly under the radar, so to speak. So when I talked to Drew, I asked him to tell me about him.
Yeah, let me tell you a story of that guy. Yeah, let me tell you that story. It was an apartment conversion to condo during the boom. So Jennifer had a punch-out list. She had a couple things she needed fixed before her condo was exactly perfect, as they promised in a contract. We were down to painting, molding. And Jennifer would come home at lunch, and she would stand in the doorway and be on the phone with someone while workers worked for half hour even at times, because she would not let them in without her, period. And it being safety conscious, she was always on the phone. Well, that day, she was on the phone with me. So there's no bullshit involved here. And she said, Dad, I gotta go. These guys aren't finished. They just have the trailer. I'm like, tell them to put some white paint in the Tupperware container for you. I'll do it. No hablo, no hablo, no hablo. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. She said, okay, go. I gotta leave. Go. So that's done. A couple years down the road, something happens to one of them where they end up in jail. Well, they had the opportunity to speak with the gentleman who was in there that said, well, she was really a nice young lady and she just said, lock up on your way out. And he passed the polygraph on that. I'm like, he lied. He lied. I'm on the phone with her. And they know I was on the phone with her. I don't understand. One thing I don't understand, Sean, we've mentioned, and I think you've even mentioned through your podcast, 4 or 5 individuals, right? People, are they involved? Aren't they involved? Situations put you involved or they don't put you involved, whether they're involved or not. But how can you have 5 people of interest and not continually go back to them and say, you want to tell me that story again? They interview him once. Now they rip Rob apart. He's been polygraphed like 4 times. He's been interviewed like a dozen times. He's done everything in the world that these people have asked, as well as us. But the people who maybe, oh yeah, we interviewed. No, nothing. Okay. Like, okay, so go back and ask them to tell a story again. In 6 months, go back and ask them to tell a story again. And go back again. Ask them to tell a story again. It only makes sense. It's logic to me. But I guess in the real world, it doesn't happen. And I want to say, this is not a beat down on police and law enforcement. It's a beat down on our system. There's a lot of things working against the people that want to do. I know detectives that want to do things that they can't. Or they're not allowed to, or they're told not to. We have a very political system all throughout our country. And it's really tough to deal with when you look at the criminal end of things, because we have laws and everybody has to be treated a certain way so we don't break their rights. Well, my daughter's right was broken. I don't care what we do. Prove yourself. If you're on the other end of somebody pointing a finger, prove it. Come right up, step right up. Got nothing to hide. Prove it. But yet, they just interview him once and, nah, that's okay. They didn't do it. I don't get it.
The punch-out list worker, that's how I'll refer to him for now, is a person of interest for us as we move forward. There are questions there. Questions that need to be answered. Things that need to be investigated. And paths that need to be followed. What reason would this person have to not be truthful? What crime were they arrested for? And does it indicate behaviors that could be related to Jennifer's abduction? Of course, we don't have the answers to these questions yet. So for now, that's another day. But something that Scott and I continue to work hard on. Before I finished speaking with Drew, I'd asked about the most recent search for Jennifer at Sands Key in South Florida. The search altogether had just seemed odd, and I was wanting to know if there was more to the story.
At Sands Key? Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly why they searched. Law enforcement, our Orlando Police Department has been, I don't even believe I'm going to say this, exemplary in reacting to leads that come into Jennifer. In my opinion, it's my humble opinion, they suck at creating investigative leads. So as they're very good on follow-up with anything that comes in, incredible. I mean, incredible. Flip side of the coin, I don't think they're very good. However, and they know that, they just, Mr. Kesse's Mr. Kesse. But whatever. Sands Key, we had someone contact my son who put them in contact with me. And it was basically coordinates. When coordinates are given and specifics are given, it has to be followed up on. And we were told that Jennifer was not only taken, but being held just above Orlando for all that time. And they were done with her because they took another young woman and they drugged her, took her down into the Keys and threw her overboard. And she has washed up on Sands Key, which is, that key was half vacant or half, it's wilderness. And honestly, within 15 minutes, we had Coast Guard, or I shouldn't say we, law enforcement had Coast Guard. They searched the island the next day and the day after and everything by foot and what have you. Incredibly quick. I didn't even expect, honestly. And honestly, the way I said it, I said, well, if I had this information, what would you do? And the answer was, we'd act immediately on it. And they did. But unfortunately, it was not. And, throughout, I mean, that's just fun. I mean, we probably have 20, 25 of that, honestly. We had a woman one day tell the cops that I'm the person I'm the person in that film. And she just wanted to get attention and get the cops to get her husband, who was coking her up. I mean, it's just amazing what people do. We were standing at the corners holding our sign. The guy flips out, comes out of his car at a red light. Jesus sent me. I'm going to match the reward right now, and writes us a $15,000 check. That was no good. I mean, you talk about crazy people. I mean, it's beyond what I can. If you could think it's happened.
So there doesn't seem to be anything that we can take from the search other than appreciating the rapid response of the Orlando Police Department to the tip. My conversations with Drew, they didn't stop there. But today, our episode does. We now have a clear understanding of the confusion that has surrounded the cell phones in this case. And while there may not be answers, there is a clear direction. The only way forward is with an understanding that the cell phone information is not factual, and we can't take it as confirmation of a morning or a nighttime abduction in Jennifer's case. We have to move forward with open possibilities. We also considered that there are suspects that have been on the fringes of this investigation that need a closer look. No one has been ruled out in this case, especially someone who at one point was given a lie detector test, and who may not have been telling the whole truth. For us, that deserves a closer look. And it's a path that we currently travel. Next episode, we plan to go back to where it all started, with a hard look at Jennifer's residence and last known whereabouts. But if you haven't learned by now, that certainly could change. As always, thank you for joining us on this journey, and remember, keep thinking, keep talking, and keep participating. You are important if we want to move this case forward. We will be back next week with our follow-up sidebar episode as we get back on track with our real-time, week-by-week investigation into Jennifer Kesse's disappearance. Don't forget to send in your comments and questions on email, social media, or voicemail, and we look forward to you being part of the show. Also, don't forget, if you think you may know something about the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse, the time to come forward is right now. Call the Orlando Police Department and ask to speak to the detectives in charge of this case. And if you don't want to call them, call us. Whatever you do, please call someone. Unconcluded is produced by Scott Jameson and myself. Music in this episode by PC3. We'll see you next time.